Hello and welcome to the questions portion of your CITW training today. I am not here, but I am here in spirit. Look, right there in the corner of the screen. I would like to go over the objectives for this session. So at the end of the session, we will know the research recommendations for asking questions, understand the differences between the different types of questions, and then also we will be able to form specific questions for an upcoming lesson. Okay, so I'd like you to take about 1 minute right now and turn to someone near you and just answer the following questions. What do you know about questions? What do you think you know about these questions? And then what do you want to know? So take 1 minute and we'll do that really quick. Okay, I hope you all had a chance to personalize those objectives really well for you today for this session. I wanted to touch again on these different objectives and how I got to them. So the know again is whenever we're talking about facts, and understand is more like concepts, and then be able to do is more like procedural knowledge. So that's how I got to those objectives. Okay, so I know that we've seen this chart a lot. We have actually separated the cues, questions, and advanced organizers, so you're not overwhelmed with all this new material today. So all the new learning that's going to take place today in all of your sessions are going to be in the second component. Okay, so the first component is that creating the environment for learning. So that's something that happens every lesson, every student, every day. So those are like setting objectives and providing feedback, reinforcing effort and providing recognition, and then finally cooperative learning. Okay, so that's like the meat of your hamburger, remember? Now, the condiments are the elements from component 2 and component 3. So we're going to be talking about the first part of component 2, which is cues, questions, and advanced organizers. Now, just again, a friendly reminder is that notice how the arrows are pointing down from component 1, so the creating environment for learning. Okay, so you need that in order to get to component 2 or to component 3. So we're going to help students develop some understanding. Okay? All right, so what I'd like you to do is, last time you took a self-evaluation on questions, well, cues and questions, really. So I'd like you to discuss those responses that you had with a partner. If you're uncomfortable with doing that, maybe just talk about the actual prompts. You don't have to necessarily share your scores. Take about 45 seconds to do that. Okay, I'm going to ask you to wrap up that last thought. Okay, so this actually, that self-evaluation was an example of an advanced organizer. These cues, questions, and advanced organizers enhance a student's ability to retrieve, use, and organize what they already know about a topic. Okay, so cues are like little hints. Questions can be literal or inferential. And then advanced organizers are like teacher prepared notes, graphic organizers, videos, etc. Okay? Cues and questions account for approximately 80% of what goes on in a classroom on a given day. Now, cues and questions are grouped together. So whenever I talk about some things, I'm going to be taking out some of the cues portion of it because you're going to get that in a different session. Okay, so the recommendations for classroom practice for cues and questions are focus on what's important, use explicit clues, ask inferential questions, and ask analytical questions, okay? In order to get QFIC on all of these, you have to hit all 4, all right? So we want to make sure that we communicate to you that cues and questions are something that we see all the time in walkthroughs. So the data is really good on that. We just want to tighten up some things and make sure everyone's doing the same stuff and intentionally including these questions and cues in their lesson planning. Okay? In addition, I am going to be focusing on 3 and 4, where you're going to get the 1 and 2 in another session. The 3rd and 4th recommendations for classroom practice suggest that teachers provide information and ask questions at all levels of Bloom's taxonomy or Webb's depth of knowledge, especially inferential and analytical. In order to do so, it is important to bring in that background knowledge and help students have a foundation for the next content that they will learn, often by beginning with literal thinking. The information on this slide illustrates in advance the 3 levels of thinking to be discussed, and also it serves as an advanced organizer for your learning. So the 3 levels of thinking are literal, inferential, and analytical. Okay? All right, so for literal thinking, students can identify basic facts from writing, read for details, and identify concepts as stated or main ideas. If you want to think about it this way, here's a metaphor. A warehouse, so literal thinking is like the warehouse where raw materials are stored, and when removed, the materials come out in the same form, okay? So it's on the lower end of that Bloom's taxonomy or Webb's depth of knowledge. So to demonstrate this literal thinking and these literal questions, I wanted to do this activity with you all. So, and I'm going to try to read this to the best of my ability. So the 5 oogly Ballingers dandered flattishly next to the Brandelers asked. Okay? Now, if we look at these questions, number 1, what did the oogly Ballingers do? Oh, they dandered flattishly, correct? Who dandered? The 5 oogly Ballingers. How did the Ballingers dander? They dandered flattishly, right? What kind of Ballingers were they? They were oogly ones. And what was Brantelard? The asked, correct? So these are simply recall questions, all right? Which are important, yes. However, we should also push our students to move beyond just asking questions for recall and to recognize information. So the first recommendation that I'm going to talk about today is recommendation number 3, and that is ask inferential questions. Okay, so students can draw conclusions, make generalizations, and develop an understanding of figurative language. Right? Inferential thinking requires students to read between the lines and fill in information that is not explicitly provided. Okay? We all use inferential thinking daily. For example, a teacher needs materials to teach a science lesson and stops by the grocery store to purchase cups and balloons. While in the store, the teacher picks up a carton of ice cream. When the items are in the checkout counter, the clerk says, "You must be having a party." Not willing to explain, the teacher smiles and says, "It certainly looks that way," and the clerk made an inference by using prior knowledge and experiences. Okay? So this happens all the time. All right? Inferential thinking provides a greater cognitive complexity because the information is missing, and a logical and defensible conclusion must be made. Okay? Inferring can occur in an ELA class when students are asked to explain after reading 2 stories what might be the reaction of the main character in the first story if placed in the setting of the second story. In addition, students in math have been predicting the number of red and yellow Skittles in a package, then opening the package to discover the actual numbers. Okay? Next, the teacher asks them to use the data collected to infer the numbers of the red and blue Skittles in other packages as well. All right. So what I'd like to do now is do an activity, and we are going to use this groceries receipt that's provided, okay, and I have copies of that for you. Mr. Lammers is going to pass them out, okay, and I would like you to create a story about what has occurred, okay, in order to get this lovely grocery list here, okay. We're going to do this with a partner, and I'm going to give you 2 minutes to create this story, okay, 2 minutes, and I have a timer this time, all right, so, you ready? Here we go. All right, welcome back. So I hope that you all have created some amazing stories. I would like to invite Mr. Lammers, if there is time, to pause this video and share some of the stories, because I'm sure we have some creative ones. Okay, so we're making inferences about this couple or of this person's shopping tendencies, okay? We don't know for sure, nor will we ever know what they were actually doing or what they actually were planning for or buying for, but we made some inferences based on our prior knowledge. Our next recommendation is recommendation number 4, and that is to ask analytic questions, okay? So, analytic questions prompt students to think more deeply and critically about the information presented. Teachers can frame questions around the skills of analyzing errors, constructing support, and analyzing perspectives. Analyzing errors in thinking involves identifying and then articulating when someone uses faulty logic, attacks a person rather than focuses on issues, uses weak references, confuses facts, or misapplies a concept. Constructing support means that the student provides support for an argument or proof for an assertion, so like text-based or data-based evidence, while analyzing single or multiple perspectives and accessing background knowledge that emphasizes identifying and articulating personal perspectives about issues. Okay? So, analyzing errors, we're going to ask, like, what are some of the errors in reasoning? Constructing support was an argument that would support this claim. And then analyzing perspectives, what is the reasoning behind this perspective? So if you would like a lovely metaphor to go with these analytical questions, we'll use this. The metaphor is an inventor finding new uses for materials or for a product that was already manufactured. So students can judge the accuracy of materials, distinguish between fact and opinion, identify propaganda techniques, and development of conceptual understanding as apparent. I'm sure we've all seen this graphic before in our teaching career. This is the Bloom's taxonomy for educational objectives. Basically, it's to continue to increase the rigor in the classroom. However, many districts are moving towards the WEBS version because of the depth of knowledge the DOK processes. Okay, so I just wanted to touch base quickly on this. So we know that DOK 1 is recall and reproduction. DOK 2 is basic thinking and reasoning. DOK 3 is strategic thinking and reasoning, and then DOK 4 is extended thinking and reasoning. So there's a distinct difference between these, and we want to keep pushing our kids to that strategic and extended, so the DOK 3 and 4. All right, so what I'd like to spend some time on is this question-answer relationship structure. It helps students understand that different types of questions require different types of thinking. Okay, so there are two different colors. So there's the in-text and the in your head. Okay, and then there's 4 different types of questions in the question-answer relationship model. Okay, so they're right there. These are the lower level Bloom's or Webb's questions whose answers can be pulled directly from the text. Often the words used in the question are mirrored in the text. It requires that literal thinking. Okay? The think and search is information from several parts of the text, and it's put together to generate an answer. So it requires literal thinking as well. However, there's a little bit more searching in the text. Okay? Author and you questions, some information is provided in the text, and the student is required to use background knowledge to create a complete understanding and answer. It is important to glean indirect information. This type of question requires students to think inferentially, okay? And it requires inferential and analytical thinking. The on your own is another type of question. The answers may not come from the text per se, although reading the passage will add to the student's background knowledge. In order to answer the question, background knowledge in the topic area is required. It requires analytical thinking or analytic thinking. On my own questions may not be fair questions for all students given their background knowledge. These questions might better serve learning if they are done in pairs or groups. Okay? All right, so I'd like to do an activity. I'm sure we're all pretty familiar with the Declaration of Independence. However, I just want to pull some questions from here modeling that QAR model. Okay, so here's the Declaration of Independence. I have also created copies of this if you would like to see the copy like in front of you, because I'm going to go to the next slide. So here we go. So here's that model, the QAR model, okay, and what types of questions can be formed based on those, based on the Declaration of Independence. So the right there questions are, what are the self-evident truths presented in the Declaration of Independence? What are 3 examples of unalienable rights that are listed? Okay, so those are those right there. They can be lifted directly from the text. The think and search questions are as follows. Why did the author believe the time had come to declare independence? And what did the authors argue was the purpose of government? Okay, these questions can be answered using information directly from the text, but information comes from different sections and must be put together. So these are like right there questions, but you have to kind of weave them together. Okay. Author and you questions. In what ways does government impact your safety and happiness? In what ways did the wording of the Declaration of Independence allow or enable slavery and lack of women's rights? Okay. This is a good example of inferential questions. Students would need background knowledge about what all men are created equal means, slavery and women's rights. They would also need to read between the lines regarding the information in the Declaration of Independence. Okay? On my own questions are as follows. How does the United States Constitution embody the ideas found in the Declaration of Independence? And what are issues that we are currently addressing today that relate directly to the Declaration of Independence? Okay? So a lot of these, the students may not have that necessary background knowledge to answer. So there's nothing in the text that will allow students to access this information necessary for answering the question. However, they do need this information. They do need the passage, what's in the passage, in order to address these questions. Okay, so what I would like you to do, and I'm going to ask Mr. Lammers to hand out this activity. I have a handout for you, and it has more information about the QAR model. So first, what I'd like you to do, what I'm going to ask you to do, is take a look at those different types of questions that are listed in there. It will be extremely helpful whenever you're actually going and implementing these different strategies into your lessons for the remainder of the day. Then, whenever you're done reading through the 4 different QAR question model, I would like you to do the practice passage on the back. It says passage for practice in the back. Don't really worry about answering the questions, but focus on the type of question and then your reasoning behind the choice. I'm going to give you 5 minutes, or Mr. Lammers is going to give you 5 minutes to complete this. So please pause the video, Mr. Lammers, if you could. Thank you. All right, I hope after this activity you kind of got a little bit more solid on that QAR model. There are specific times where you're going to use certain questions, and then there's other times where you're going to use like the think on your own questions, etc. All right, so for the remainder of the day, I just wanted to briefly touch back on the recommendations for classroom practice for questions, okay? Those are ask inferential questions and ask analytic questions, all right? The must-dos for the rest of the day are complete your survey about CITW PD. So you'll be getting that. You're going to complete that at one of your last sessions of the day. Your may-dos are as follows. You can work with your job-alike person or somebody outside of your area, a trusted partner, or independently, and work on implementation strategies for questions in upcoming lessons.